The Furies, avenging spirits or agents of cosmic law. Before the gleaming marble temples of Olympus pierced the clouds, before Zeus reigned with thunder and decree, there were older, darker powers stirring in the foundational clay of existence. They were not gods to be worshipped with wine and sacrifice, but forces to be feared, principles to be respected. They were the children of a crime that predated humanity itself, born from the first schism in the divine family. They have been called the Erinyes, the angry ones. The Romans knew them as the Furies. And to those who sought to appease them, they were whispered of as the Eumenides, the kindly ones. But whatever the name, their purpose was singular and terrible: vengeance. But was it mere vengeance? A blind, bloodthirsty rage unleashed upon the guilty? Or were they something more? Were they the incorruptible agents of a cosmic law, the guarantors of a balance so fundamental that even the gods dared not defy it? Welcome back to the Eldritch Codex. Today, we journey into the primordial dark to confront the spirits of retribution. We will walk the blood-soaked halls of the House of Atreus, stand trial in the shadow of the Acropolis, and ask the ultimate question: the Furies, were they simple spirits of vengeance, or the terrifying necessary agents of cosmic law? In the unremembered dawn of everything, before time was measured and before stars were named, there was the void. The Greeks called it chaos, not a state of disorder, but one of pure, raw potential. An infinite, yawning darkness from which all things would eventually spring. From this primordial soup of possibility, the first consciousness is stirred. They were not gods in the way we would come to know them, not beings with human forms or fallible emotions. They were immense, fundamental principles given form. First, Gaia, the earth. She was the foundation, the wide-bosomed mother, the very substance of the physical world. And then, arching over her, was Uranus, the starry sky. He was the vault of heaven, the blanket of night, the infinite expanse. Together, they were the first divine couple. Their union was the engine of creation. And their children were giants in every sense of the word. First came the Cyclope-choking, one-eyed artisans who could forge thunderbolts. Then came the Centimanes, the hundred-handers, beings of terrifying, unimaginable strength. And finally the 12 Titans, gods of such power that the very earth trembled with their footsteps. But Uranus, the Sky Father, looked upon his magnificent children, and he felt no pride. He felt fear. He saw in their strength the challenge to his own supremacy. In their vibrant life, he saw the seeds of his own demise. His rule was one of absolute authority, and he would suffer no rivals. And so one by one as they were born, he committed an act of unspeakable cruelty. He seized his own children and thrust them back into the deepest recesses of their mother, imprisoning them in the dark, cavernous womb of Gaia herself. He buried his future in the body of his present. Gaia, the Earth Mother, groaned. She was a mother in agony, a prison of her own flesh. The weight of her captive children was a constant, grinding torment. Her body, the very land itself, was strained to the breaking point by the burgeoning power trapped within her. Her love for her children curdled into a slow-burning rage against her tyrannical husband. The first seeds of cosmic rebellion were sown not in a quest for power, but in a mother's pain. Driven to the edge of endurance, Gaia conceived a plan. A desperate and terrible solution. From the gray, unforgiving heart of her own substance, from the iron and stone within her, she brought forth the new element adamant, a metal said to be unbreakable. And from this metal, she forged a tool of both liberation and rebellion, a great, jagged sickle, its edge gleaming with grim purpose in the primordial gloom. She descended to her imprisoned children, deep within the earth. She showed them the weapon and spoke to them with a voice that was both a mother's plea and a queen's command. She spoke of their father's tyranny, of her unending agony, and of the vengeance they were owed. "My children," she implored, "born of a wicked father. If you will do my bidding, we shall avenge the brutal crime of your sire. For he was the first to plot such shameful acts." But most of the Titans, long imprisoned, cowered in fear. The thought of raising a hand against their father, the all-powerful Sky, was unthinkable. Silence reigned in the darkness, a testament to the terror Uranus inspired. Only one stepped forward. Cronus, the youngest of the Titans, yet the most cunning and ambitious. His heart was filled with a deep resentment for his father, a bitterness that had festered in the long years of his confinement. He alone did not fear his father's wrath as much as he craved his power. He took the adamantine sickle from his mother's hand. "Mother," he declared, "I shall do this deed. I care nothing for our accursed father, for he was the first to plot such shameful acts." And so the trap was set. Gaia lay in wait, and Cronus concealed himself in ambush. That night Uranus, suspecting nothing, descended from the heavens, his starry form vast and overwhelming. He longed to embrace Gaia, to cover the earth once more. And as he drew near, Cronus struck. In a single, swift motion of unimaginable violence, he seized his father with one hand, and with the other, he swung the great sickle. He committed the first, most fundamental crime in the history of the cosmos. An act of patricide. A son's violation of his father. He severed Uranus's genitals and cast them away, forever sundering the sky from the earth. The universe held its breath. A schism had been torn in the fabric of the divine family. The blood of the Sky Father, sacred and divine, did not simply vanish. It rained down from the heavens, and where it fell upon the earth, it gave birth to new and terrible life. This was not the ordered creation of union, but a spontaneous generation born from violence, pain, and betrayal. From the place where the severed organs fell into the sea, a white foam began to churn. And from that foam arose a being of breathtaking beauty and irresistible charm. This was Aphrodite, the goddess of love and Desiree, testament to the strange and paradoxical idea that beauty can arise even from the most brutal of acts. From the blood that splattered across the fertile land of Mother Earth, another brood sprang forth. The gigantous giants. Hulking, aggressive beings of immense strength, born of the terrestrial rage that soaked the soil. They were warriors, destined to one day challenge the very gods who would rule Olympus. But it was the last drops of that sacred, spilled blood, the darkest, most vengeful, most potent drops, which fell upon the earth and were absorbed deep into its chthonic heart that gave birth to something else entirely. Something ancient, implacable, and terrifying. They were not creatures of flesh and blood, but entities of pure consequence. They were the physical embodiment of a broken law. They were the memory of the crime, given form and agency. They were the Erinyes, the angry ones. The Furies. Their very existence was a response to a cosmic imbalance. Born of patricide, their sole purpose was to hunt down and punish those who committed the most heinous of sins against the natural order, chief among them the shedding of kindred blood. They are older than Zeus, older than the Olympian pantheon. They answer to no king, for their authority comes from a crime that predates all kingdoms. They are a law unto themselves, because they are the law. The ancient poets, trying to capture their horror in words, describe them as hags of the underworld, daughters of eternal night. They were 3 in number, a trinity of retribution. There was Alecto, whose name means unceasing in anger. She is the fury of relentless pursuit, the one who never rests, who drives the sinner across lands and seas, allowing no moment of peace. She is the psychological torment, the ever-present goad. There was Megaera, the grudging one. She embodies the bitterness of the slight, the long-held grudge that festers into poison. She is the fury of resentment, ensuring that the crime is never forgotten, the wound never allowed to heal. And finally there was Tisiphone, the avenger of murder. She is the final consequence, the deliverer of the sentence. She carries the brazen scourge and the burning torch, the instruments of a punishment that is both physical and spiritual. She is the personification of righteous, murderous rage. They were not judges who deliberated. They were a sentence already in motion. They operated on a plane of existence far removed from the golden halls of Olympus. While the Olympians feasted, squabbled, and interfered in mortal affairs for sport or favor, the Furies attended to a deeper, colder, and more fundamental calculus. Their jurisdiction was precise, kinslaying, oath-breaking, and filial impiety. To break one of these unwritten, primal laws was to summon them. They could not be bought with sacrifice or swayed by prayer. They were the universe's immune system, rushing to the site of a mortal infection. They were the walking, screaming manifestation of a guilty conscience, a force of nature as inescapable as gravity. They were the memory of the blood you spilled, and they would follow you to the ends of the earth, whispering your sin into your ear until madness or death was your only escape. This then is their nature. Are they mere spirits of vengeance, born of a hateful act? Or are they the first, necessary agents of cosmic law, a brutal but essential check on the chaos that threatens to consume all? This abstract, cosmic principle, forged in the first divine crime, needed a crucible. It needed a human stage on which its true nature could be revealed. It would find that stage in the blood-soaked halls of a cursed mortal family. And in the tragic story of the House of Atreus, the Furies' terrible and magnificent purpose would be forever defined. If the Furies are the universe's response to a foundational crime, they require a mortal stage on which to enact their terrible drama. They needed a family so steeped in transgression, so defined by bloodshed, that its story would become a lesson for all eternity. They found such a family in the royal line of Mycenae, the doomed, tragic, and unforgivable House of Atreus. Their story is not a single act of tragedy, but a symphony of sin, composed across generations. Each movement is an escalation of horror, each note a betrayal, and the recurring terrifying chorus is the silent, gathering presence of the Furies, their gaze fixed upon a bloodline spiraling into damnation. The symphony's opening chord was struck by the dynasty's founder, Tantalus. He was no ordinary mortal. A son of Zeus himself, he was a king of immense wealth and a favorite of the Olympian gods. He was granted the almost unheard-of honor of dining at their table on Mount Olympus, sharing their nectar and ambrosia, and listening to their divine counsel. But this intimacy with the gods did not breed humility in Tantalus. It bred a monstrous arrogance. It bred hubris. He began to believe himself their equal, perhaps even their superior. And so he devised a test. A depraved, blasphemous trial to gauge the limits of their omniscience. He invited the gods to a great feast in his own palace. And for the main course he prepared a dish of unparalleled horror. He murdered his own young son, Pelops, dismembered his body, and cooked him into a rich stew to serve to his divine guests. The Olympians, of course, were not fooled. All but one Demeter, distracted by grief for her lost daughter Persephone, immediately recognized the foul nature of the meal and recoiled. The deception had failed. The sacrilege was absolute. Tantalus had violated not only the laws of hospitality, but the most sacred bond of all, that between a father and his child. His punishment was a masterpiece of eternal irony. The gods restored Pelops to life, replacing the shoulder bone Demeter had inadvertently eaten with one of ivory. But for Tantalus, they reserved a special place in the deepest pit of the underworld, Tartarus. There he stands for eternity, submerged up to his neck in a cool, clear pool of water. Yet whenever he bends to quench his raging thirst, the water recedes from his lips. Above his head hangs a branch laden with succulent, ripe fruit. Yet whenever he reaches to sate his gnawing hunger, a gust of wind whips the branch just out of his grasp. He is forever tortured by the proximity of that which he can never have. From his fate we derive our word, to tantalize. But his personal torment was not the end of the matter. A crime of this magnitude does not simply punish the perpetrator, it poisons the very blood that flows through his descendants. Tantalus had inflicted a hereditary stain upon his line, a spiritual sickness that would drive his children, and their children, to acts of madness, betrayal, and self-destruction. The Furies born to avenge the violation of kinship now had their eyes fixed firmly upon his house. The curse had taken root. And so the poison flowed down to his grandsons, Atreus and Thyestes. The two brothers inherited not only their grandfather's kingdom but also his capacity for cruelty. They vied for the throne of Mycenae, their rivalry a bitter storm of ambition and deceit. The conflict reached its tipping point when Thyestes committed a profound betrayal. He seduced his brother's wife, Arope, shaming Atreus and violating the sanctity of his home and marriage. In response, Atreus did not challenge his brother to a duel or banish him from the kingdom. The curse in his blood demanded a revenge of a different magnitude. A revenge so vile it would make the sin of Tantalus seem like a pale rehearsal. He feigned reconciliation. He sent word to his brother, inviting him and his sons back to Mycenae to share power and celebrate their reunion with a magnificent feast. Thyestes, wary but hopeful, accepted. He was welcomed with open arms and false smiles. He sat at his brother's table, was served the finest wine and the most sumptuous food. He ate his fill, praising the generosity of his host. And when the meal was over, when Thyestes was content and unsuspecting, Atreus revealed the true nature of his hospitality. A servant entered, carrying a covered platter. Atreus lifted the lid, and there, swimming in a pool of blood and congealed gravy, were the severed heads, hands, and feet of Thyestes' own children. The crime was a cosmic abomination. A violation so profound that the ancient poet say Helios, the sun god, turned his chariot back in the sky, refusing to shine his light upon such a horror. The Furies who punished the shedding of kindred blood were no longer just watching this family. They were now bound to it by an unbreakable chain of atrocity. Thyestes, broken and desolate, fled into exile, but not before screaming a terrible, formal curse upon Atreus and all his descendants, adding yet another layer of damnation to their fate. The stage was now set for the most famous act of this tragedy. The curse passed to the next generation, to the sons of Atreus, Agamemnon, the mighty king who would lead the Greeks to Troy, and Menelaus, whose wife Helen's abduction would launch 1,000 ships. To secure victory in that great war, Agamemnon would be asked to pay a terrible price. As the Greek fleet gathered at the port of Aulis, the winds died. The sea was unnaturally calm. The ships could not sail. The seer Calchas revealed the cause. King Agamemnon had offended the goddess Artemis, and she demanded a sacrifice to appease her wrath and release the winds. The sacrifice she demanded was Agamemnon's own eldest daughter, Iphigenia. Trapped between ambition and fatherhood, Agamemnon made his choice. He chose the war. He sent word home to his wife, Clytemnestra, telling her to bring Iphigenia to Aulis. But he cloaked the horror in a lie. He told them the girl was to be married to the greatest of all Greek warriors, Achilles. Imagine the scene. A mother swelling with pride, dressing her daughter for her wedding day. A young girl full of hope, traveling to meet her glorious husband. They arrive not at a wedding pavilion, but at a stone altar. The cheering soldiers are not wedding guests, but a silent, grim-faced army. The groom is not Achilles, but a priest with a sacrificial knife. In that moment of horrific realization, Clytemnestra's love for her husband died, and something cold, hard, and patient took its place. Agamemnon sacrificed his daughter, the winds began to blow, and the fleet sailed for Troy. For 10 long years, while Agamemnon fought for glory on the plains of Troy, Clytemnestra waited in Mycenae. Her grief did not soften with time. It curdled. It hardened into a diamond-sharp resolve for revenge. She took a lover, Aegisthus, the sole surviving son of the wronged Thyestes, a man who carried his own generational thirst for vengeance. Together they ruled Mycenae, and together they plotted. When Agamemnon finally returned, a conquering hero laden with the spoils of war, he walked directly into a meticulously prepared trap. Clytemnestra greeted him with honeyed words of praise. She ordered her servants to roll out a magnificent crimson tapestry, a path of deep red fabric stretching from his chariot to the palace doors. Let the conqueror of Troy walk on a path of crimson, she declared. It was an act of supreme hubris to tread upon such priceless wealth. But it was also a symbol. She was making him walk on a path the color of the blood he had so willingly spilled, the blood of their daughter. Agamemnon, arrogant in his victory, stepped onto the tapestry and walked into his home. Later, as he luxuriated in a warm bath, unarmed and vulnerable, the moment of vengeance arrived. Clytemnestra ensnared him in a net-like robe, and while he was tangled and helpless, she and Aegisthus struck him down with a double-headed axe, the ceremonial weapon of the house. The great king was butchered in his own bath, murdered by his own queen. Now the Furies stir. The moral calculus has become hideously complex. A wife has murdered her husband, a king, but a mother has avenged her slaughtered child. Aegisthus has avenged his own murdered siblings. The cycle of blood for blood has turned upon itself, creating a vortex of sin. The act is done, and in its wake it leaves behind the children of the slain king and his murderous queen. A daughter, Electra, consumed by grief and hatred, and a son, Orestes, sent into exile. It would be this son, Orestes, who would face the ultimate divine paradox and who would finally come face to face with the Furies themselves, forcing them out of the shadows and into the light of history. The symphony of sin was about to reach its terrifying crescendo. Across the tormented landscapes of Greece, the hunted Orestes flees, the Furies a living storm of madness at his heels. They are the shriek in his ears, the venom in his blood, the ceaseless shadow that proves his guilt. Apollo's sanctuary at Delphi offered only a temporary reprieve, a whispered prophecy of a final destination. A city ruled by a goddess of wisdom, a hill named for the god of war. And so Orestes, the specter of a man, his body gaunt and his mind fractured, arrives at the citadel of Athens. He scrambles up the sacred hill of the Acropolis and collapses at the foot of a statue. Not just any statue. He clings to the ancient wooden effigy of Pallas Athena, the grey-eyed goddess of wisdom, civilization, strategy, and the crafts. He, a man polluted by the ultimate crime, seeks sanctuary from the patroness of order. No sooner has he found this fragile refuge than his pursuers arrive. The Furies, the ancient children of night, sweep into the holy precinct. Their presence is a blight upon the sacred ground. They are black-robed, their hair a nest of hissing serpents, their foul breath a miasma of the underworld. They are a terrifying intrusion of primal chaos into this bastion of nascent civilization. They form a menacing circle around the desperate Orestes, their voices a unified chorus of righteous hatred, and they begin their binding song, a magical incantation meant to wither his mind and soul. This is our chant to chain the soul, they sing, a lyreless hymn, a horror to the heart, withering the life of mortal man. This is the office that fate spun for us to hold forever, to hunt the man whose hand is red with kindred blood, to hound him till he goes beneath the earth. And even in the grave he is not free. It is at this moment of supreme tension that the goddess herself appears. Athena descends, her presence radiating an aura of calm, intelligent authority. She is not frightened by the Furies, nor is she dismissive. She regards them with a steady, assessing gaze. She is the embodiment of reason confronting the embodiment of primal rage. She first addresses the Furies, acknowledging their ancient power with respect. "Who are you?" she asks, not out of ignorance, but to give them the floor to allow them to state their claim. The Furies, their voices dripping with the venom of ages, announce their identity and their purpose. They are the Erinyes, the eternal guardians of the law of blood. They are the curses of the dead. Their claim is simple, powerful, and from their point of view, absolute and irrefutable. Orestes has committed matricide. The earth itself has drunk his mother's blood, and it cries out for retribution. There can be no argument, no mitigation. He belongs to them. He is their rightful prey. Athena then turns to the trembling man clinging to her statue. She asks for his story. Orestes, his voice hoarse with exhaustion and fear, confesses everything. He is Orestes of Argos, son of the slain king Agamemnon. He admits that he killed his mother, Clytemnestra. But, he pleads, he did not act out of malice. He acted on the direct command of another god, the Lord Apollo, the oracle of Delphi, who threatened him with even greater torments if he failed to avenge his father. Just then the defendant's counsel arrives. The shining god Apollo strides into the scene to defend the man he commanded. And now the true conflict is laid bare. This is no longer merely about the fate of Orestes. It is a cosmic trial between two opposing worldviews. It is the new patriarchal logic-driven order of the Olympian gods versus the ancient, matriarchal, instinctual law of the primordial deities. It is the sky gods versus the earth gods. Apollo, imperious and certain, takes the stand. He argues that the murder of Agamemnon, great king, a victorious general, a man slain in his own home by a treacherous wife, was a far greater crime than the righteous execution of that same treacherous wife. The honor of the father, he contends, outweighs the life of the mother. Then, he deploys his most controversial and most famous argument. He attempts to sever the very root of the Furies' claim, the sanctity of the mother's blood. He posits a theory of biology that is pure patriarchal ideology. The mother of what is called her child is no parent, Apollo declares with divine certainty. She is but the nurse of the newly planted seed. The parent is he who mounts. She, a stranger, preserves a stranger's seed, if no god blight it. And I have proof of this. There can be a father without any mother. As his evidence, he gestures to the goddess Athena herself. Behold, he proclaims, the witness, the daughter of Olympian Zeus, who was not nursed in the darkness of the womb, but sprang, a full-grown warrior, from her father's immortal head. The Furies are appalled. This argument strikes at the heart of their existence, at the very fabric of nature as they know it. They accuse Apollo of trampling on the ancient rights, of championing a new, arbitrary order that favors fathers over mothers, men over women, the new gods over the old. They see his logic not as reason, but as a violent dismissal of the most fundamental laws of life itself. Athena listens to both sides with serene impartiality. She sees the chasm between them. Apollo's Olympian law on one side, the Furies' chthonic law on the other. Orestes trapped in the middle. She recognizes that to simply make a divine ruling would solve nothing. If she sides with Apollo, she would dishonor the ancient Furies, and they would unleash their pestilence upon her beloved city for all time. If she sides with the Furies, she would condemn a man who, in his own way, was seeking justice, and she would allow the endless, bloody cycle of vengeance to continue unchecked. So in a moment of unparalleled civic and legal genius, she does something entirely new. She invents the human court of law. She declares that the matter is too great for any single god, even herself, to decide. It requires human perspective. She announces that she will establish a permanent court, here on the hill of Ares, to judge the gravest of crimes. And she selects the first jury in the history of the world, 12 of the most honorable and wise citizens of Athens. They mortals will hear the case. They will weigh the arguments. And they will cast the deciding vote. The first murder trial begins. The Furies, as prosecution, present their case with raw emotional power. The law is the law. Blood for blood. A son has killed his mother. He must pay. Apollo, for the defense, reiterates his arguments for the primacy of the father and the righteousness of Orestes' act of vengeance. Finally, the arguments are concluded. The time has come for the verdict. 2 urns are placed before the jurors. One for conviction, one for acquittal. One by one, the 12 Athenians walk forward and cast their voting pebbles. Before the count, Athena declares her own role. If the vote should end in a tie, she will cast her ballot to break the deadlock. And she announces her principle. I am always for the man, she states, for I am entirely my father's child. I will not give preference to the woman who killed her husband, the master of the house. She declares her vote will be for acquittal. The votes are tipped out and counted with breathtaking suspense. 6 pebbles for conviction. 6 pebbles for acquittal. The jury is tied. The fate of Orestes, the future of the house of Atreus, and the very nature of justice itself hangs in this perfect balance. As promised, Athena's vote becomes the tiebreaker. Orestes is acquitted on the charge of murder, she proclaims. The votes are equal. The Furies are incandescent with rage. They shriek in protest and issue a terrifying threat. They will make Athens pay for this insult. They will unleash their full, blighting power upon the city. You, the younger gods, have written down the ancient laws, they cry. Dishonored, we shall let loose upon this land a poison, a drop of venom from our hearts for soil and seed, a plague that will rot the land and make its women barren. We will fill your streets with strife and sudden death. This is the final crisis. But Athena does not meet their rage with violence. She does not banish them. She meets their fury with wisdom, their threats with honor. She begins the delicate, masterful process of persuasion. She tells them they have not lost, but that their role must evolve. She praises their importance, acknowledging that no household can thrive without their fearsome power. She offers them not defeat, but a new compact, a new home, a new function, and a new name. She invites them to stay in Athens, to become resident deities with their own sacred shrine in a grotto beneath the very hill on which they stand. They will no longer be the Erinyes, the reviled hunters of individual sinners. They will be transformed into the Eumenides, the kindly ones. Their fearsome power, once directed at vengeance, will now be channeled into a protective civic force. They will become the guardians of Athens, ensuring fertile marriages, healthy children, prosperous harvests, and the sanctity of the city's laws. Their rage will be transmuted into a blessing. Slowly, painstakingly, won over by Athena's respect and wisdom, the Furies relent. Their ancient anger cools. They accept the offer. They agree to the transformation. The primal rage of the underworld has been peacefully integrated into the rational order of the city-state. The play and the trial ends in a magnificent spectacle. A great torchlit procession of Athenian citizens, led by Athena herself, escorts the newly named Eumenides to their new home. They are no longer figures of terror, but honored protectors, celebrated with hymns of praise. The cycle of blood is broken. The curse of Atreus is lifted. And the age of vengeance has given way to the age of justice. The trial on the Areopagus is more than the climax of a story. It is a philosophical crucible. The transformation of the Erinyes into the Eumenides is the key that unlocks the door to our central question. To truly understand them, we must now step back from the epic narrative and enter the realm of ideas. We must dissect their very nature and place them on the scales of judgment. So let us put the Furies themselves on trial. In the case of Cosmos v. the Erinyes, what is the final verdict? Are they simply spirits of vengeance, or are they the incorruptible agents of cosmic law? The truth, as the myth of Orestes so brilliantly reveals, is that they are both. They are the embodiment of an evolution in the very concept of justice. To understand this, we must argue both sides of the case with equal force. First, let us present the case for the prosecution, that the Furies are, at their core, spirits of pure, unadulterated vengeance. Their very origin screams of emotion, not logic. They are not born from a divine decree or rational plan for the universe. They are born from the spilled blood of a wounded god in the primal agony of a violated earth. They are a gut reaction. Their very essence is the rage of a victim, given form and terrible power. Consider their names, the very labels for their being. Alecto, the unceasing in anger. This is not the name of a judge, it is the description of a relentless, obsessive rage. Magira, the grudging. This speaks not of legal principle, but of the deeply personal, corrosive nature of a long-held grudge. Tisiphone, the avenger of murder. Her name explicitly defines her as an avenger, not an arbiter. Vengeance seeks to satisfy an emotional wound. Justice seeks to restore societal balance. The Furies, by name and by nature, are agents of the former. Their methods betray their true character. They do not issue indictments or serve summonses. They do not conduct investigations. They are the punishment itself. They are a form of exquisite, personalized psychological torture. They are the whispers of guilt in the dead of night, the pollution of every meal, the exhaustion of a body that is never allowed to rest. Their goal is not to rehabilitate the sinner or restore order to society, but to drive the transgressor to the brink of insanity and ultimately to death. This is the methodology of a vendetta, not a legal system. And in their most famous case, their pursuit of Orestes, their tunnel vision is absolute. They exhibit no interest in mitigating circumstances. The fact that Clytemnestra was herself a regicidal murderer is irrelevant to them. The fact that Orestes acted under a direct, divine command from the god Apollo is dismissed as a contemptible excuse. Their focus is singular, narrow, and deeply personal. The sacred blood of a mother has been shed by her son. Period. They are the advocates for Clytemnestra's ghost, giving voice to her rage beyond the grave. This is not the impartial application of a universal law. It is the ultimate supernatural blood feud. Now let us hear from the defense. A compelling argument can be made that the Furies are not chaotic spirits of rage, but are, in fact, the most disciplined and fundamental agents of cosmic law. Despite their terrifying appearance and methods, the Furies are anything but chaotic. They operate with an ironclad, unwavering discipline. They do not punish indiscriminately. They are not the morality police of the ancient world. The everyday sins of mortal theft, greed, lust, dishonesty are of no concern to them. Their jurisdiction is incredibly precise, limited to a handful of foundational, cosmic-level crimes: patricide, matricide, the breaking of a sacred and solemn oath, and crimes against the sacred bond of hospitality. These are not man-made laws. They are not the decrees of a king or the votes of a senate. They are the unwritten rules that, in the Greek worldview, literally hold the fabric of a civilized universe together. To break one of them is to create a tear in reality itself. The Furies are not acting out of anger. They are acting as cosmic surgeons, attempting to violently stitch that tear back together. Furthermore, consider their most defining characteristic: they are incorruptible. In a world where the Olympian gods are notoriously fickle weight by flattery, beautiful sacrifices, personal rivalries, and petty jealousiest Furies are a bastion of impartiality. They cannot be bribed. They cannot be tricked. They cannot be reasoned out of their duty. It does not matter if you are a powerful king like Agamemnon or tormented exile like Orestes. If you violate their specific laws, they will come for you. They represent a form of justice that is higher than mortal power and, as Apollo discovered, operates on a plane that even the younger gods must respect. From this perspective, their pursuit of Orestes is not a vendetta. It is the inexorable process of a law of nature. Just as gravity is not angry at the stone that it pulls to the ground, the Furies are not angry at Orestes. They are simply fulfilling their preordained function. They are a balancing mechanism. A great imbalance has occurred, and they are the equal and opposite reaction. They are not acting out of personal malice. They are the dispassionate, terrifying execution of a sentence that was passed the moment the crime was committed. So how do we resolve this paradox? The trial of Orestes provides the answer. On the Areopagus, the two identities of the Furies are forced to confront each other. For the first time, the screaming specters of vengeance are compelled to act as litigants in a legal proceeding. They must articulate their rage as a legal argument. They become the prosecution. And in their final transformation, we witness the profound genius of the Greek understanding of social and moral progress. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, does not destroy the old way. She does not declare the law of vengeance to be evil and cast it out. She recognizes its power, its legitimacy, and its necessity. She understands that the raw, primal rage against injustice is not something to be eradicated, but something to be harnessed. It is a vital, energetic force. But she also recognizes that this force, left unchecked, is too absolute, too destructive, too cyclical to be the sole foundation of a stable, civilized society. Pure vengeance consumes everything. So she does not abolish it. She integrates it. She co-opts it. She channels its immense power. She gives the Furies a new honored place within the system of civic justice. Their unswerving, terrifying commitment to consequence becomes the bedrock upon which the new system is built. They are transformed from hunters into guardians. They become the awesome, frightening power that backs up the verdict of the court. They are the reason the law has teeth. Therefore, the final verdict on the Furies is a synthesis. They begin their existence as the agents of a brutal, primal, cosmic law so ancient and raw that, to the human eye, it is indistinguishable from vengeance. But through their encounter with human reason, mercy, and the need for a functioning society all embodied by Athena and her jury, they evolve. They are the living bridge between the two concepts. They show us that justice is not a static ideal handed down from on high. It is a difficult, painful, and necessary journey. A journey from the primal scream for retribution to the reasoned deliberation of a court. A journey from the chaos of the blood feud to the order of the social contract. The Furies are both vengeance and law, because they represent the very process by which one is transformed into the other. Myths are not merely stories of the past, they are blueprints of the human soul. And the Furies, in their terrifying dual role as the Erinyes and the Eumenides, did not vanish when the last temple to Athena crumbled into dust. An archetype this powerful, this fundamental to our experience of guilt, consequence, and justice does not die. It simply changes its name and its form. The Furies have echoed through the centuries, their relentless whisper still audible in our art, our understanding of the mind, and the very foundations of our society. To find them today, you simply need to know where to look. Their most visible legacy thrives in the world of literature, where they continue to haunt the pages as potent symbols of inescapable retribution. When the great Italian poet Dante Alighieri journeyed through the circles of hell in his Inferno, who did he place as the guardians at the gates of the city of Dis, the entrance to lower damnation? It was the three Erinyes, the blood-stained and remorseless Furies, screeching for the Gorgon Medusa to come and turn the poet to stone. Even in a Christian cosmos, they retained their ancient role as the gatekeepers of the most profound sins. Centuries later, during the dark days of the Nazi occupation of France, the existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre looked to this ancient myth to understand his own time. His 1943 play, The Flies, is a direct reimagining of the Orestes myth. The city of Argos is suffocating under a plague of flies, which are a direct metaphor for the Furies. But here, they represent the crushing, collective guilt and bad faith of a populace that has passively accepted tyranny. Orestes' act of killing the tyrant and his mother is not about vengeance, but about a radical act of free will, taking responsibility for one's actions and liberating a people from the paralysis of remorse. The Furies are the psychological weight of a history that must be confronted. In the 20th century, the great poet T.S. Eliot took the Furies inward, into the drawing rooms of the English aristocracy. His play, The Family Reunion, presents a modern protagonist, Harry, who returns to his ancestral home haunted by what he calls the sleepless hunters that will not let me sleep. He believes he has murdered his wife, and these unseen presences, which he can feel constantly watching him from just behind his shoulder, are a direct echo of the Erinyes. They are not external monsters, but manifestations of his own deep-seated guilt, and the hidden sins of his entire family. His journey is not to a court of law, but to a state of spiritual reckoning, forced upon him by his internal Furies. But perhaps the most potent and personal legacy of the Furies today lies in the realm of psychology. They are a perfect, terrifying metaphor for the internal experience of trauma, guilt, and moral injury. For anyone who has suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, the description of the Furies' pursuit is not a fantasy, it is the clinical reality. They are the intrusive memories that flash into the mind without warning. They are the hypervigilance, the feeling of being constantly hunted by a past event. They are the sleepless nights in the poisoned dreams. The Furies are the internal Erinyes that plague a mind that has witnessed or participated in something so terrible it cannot be processed. They are the personification of a conscience that will not and cannot let us forget. The myth of Orestes, a man literally driven mad by his own actions, is one of the world's oldest and most powerful illustrations of how unresolved guilt can shatter the human psyche. And what is psychotherapy in this context but a modern-day trial on the Areopagus? The therapist's office becomes the safe, contains space the sanctuary. The therapist acts as a modern-day Athena, not judging, but facilitating a process of understanding. The goal is not to kill one's personal Furies, because that is impossible. You cannot destroy a part of your own history. The goal is to do what Athena did, to listen to them, to understand their origins, to respect their power, and to persuade them to transform. The therapeutic process is the slow, painstaking work of turning the Erinyes angry, destructive, self-punishing voices of trauma into the Eumenides, the kindly ones. To integrate the experience, to accept the past, and to give that powerful emotional energy a new, less destructive place in one's life. Finally, the Furies' legacy is permanently etched into the very blueprint of our legal and social structures. The myth of Orestes' trial is nothing less than the foundational story for the West's conception of the rule of law. It is the epic narrative of the transition from private vengeance to public justice. Before the trial on the Areopagus, justice was a personal affair. A blood feud. An eye for an eye. It was a chaotic, self-perpetuating cycle of violence as seen in the endless horrors of the House of Atrus. Athena's revolutionary act was to declare that justice is not the right of the individual but the responsibility of the community. The state, through an impartial court and a jury of one's peers, becomes the arbiter. Every time a courtroom convenes, every time a jury is impaneled to weigh evidence and hear arguments, the spirit of Athena's great experiment is being reenacted. Furthermore, the Furies' original jurisdiction crimes that violate a sacred, universal order finds its echo in our highest legal ideals. The concept of crimes against humanity as prosecuted at Nuremberg and The Hague is a modern recognition that some acts are so heinous they transcend national laws. They are an offense against the entire human family. This is a secular version of the Furies' cosmic law. The myth of the Furies' transformation teaches us one of the most vital lessons of civilization. A society without consequence, without a terrifying force that holds people accountable, will inevitably descend into the chaos of might makes right. But a society that runs only on blind, absolute, vengeful consequence becomes a tyranny of blood, an endless cycle of retribution. True civilization, the myth of the Eumenides argues, is found in the difficult, precarious, and necessary balance between the two. It is the art of harnessing our righteous anger at injustice, the energy of the Renaissance, channeling it through the humane structures of reason, deliberation, mercy, and law. The Furies are the enduring, powerful reminder that for our world to have order, there must be forces that hunt in the dark. And we, the inheritors of Athena's project, should be eternally grateful that they were, in the end, persuaded to become the kindly ones. For the Erinyes, the angry ones, are never truly gone. They are still there, sleeping in the grottos of our collective unconscious, waiting for a foundational law to be broken, for a sacred trust to be betrayed, and for a new debt of blood to be paid. So we return to where we began. In the shadow of these ancient, terrifying beings, the Furies, spirits of vengeance or agents of cosmic law. They are the primordial scream of a violated universe. They are the madness that follows a terrible sin. They are the engine of the blood feud, the relentless hunters in the dark. In this, they are vengeance incarnate. But they are also the guarantors of the sacred bond. They are the incorruptible force of consequence. They are the necessary terror that checks the hubris of mortals and gods alike. In this, they are the agents of a law so profound it underpins reality itself. They are not one or the other. They are both. They are the evolution of justice itself, captured in a single, powerful myth. They show us that civilization was not a gift, but a hard-won victory wrested from the jaws of chaos. It was built by confronting our most terrifying impulses, our rage, our guilt, our thirst for revenge, and transforming them into something new, something more, something we now call justice. The Furies are a reminder that for our world to have order, there must be forces that hunt in the dark. And we should be grateful that, in the end, they were persuaded to become the kindly ones. For the Erinyes, the angry ones, are still there, deep in the shadows of our collective unconscious, waiting for a law to be broken, a sacred trust to be betrayed, and a debt of blood to be paid. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of ancient justice. The story of the Furies is a testament to the depth and complexity of a mythology that continues to shape our world. What are your thoughts? Do you see the Furies as primarily vengeful or as lawful? And what other ancient forces or forgotten deities would you like us to explore in the archives of the Eldritch Codex? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this exploration enlightening, please consider summoning a like and subscribing to the channel for more journeys into the lore of the ancient and arcane world. Your support helps us to continue deciphering these timeless stories. A special thanks as always to our patrons on Patreon, who are the true guardians of this codex. Until next time, tread carefully through the shadows of the past. They are deeper than you think.